check. Hello.
Hey, can you
Hi,
hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
Excellent. All the hears happening. All the hears.
Hi, everybody. Happy Friday.
I haven't eaten shit today. I have like nothing in my stomach. I'm so hungry right now.
I'll just go ahead and embarrass myself that Matt could literally hear my stomach growling on a call earlier. So I stuffed some pizza in my face in between meetings. So I'm no better than you today.
Yeah, client hears like a growl. Is that your disgruntled designer? No, ma'am. That's my stomach.
Yeah, luckily it was just an internal meeting and I didn't have to embarrass myself in front of a client.
That's right. Jay, you're on the home stretch right now on
Oh,
baby
buddy,
watch.
it's getting
Oh,
close.
baby. Oh,
Oh,
baby.
baby.
Next Wednesday. Oh my
Wow.
God. Yeah.
That's so exciting.
I know. I can't wait. It's weird. It's like the end of a marathon is in sight. Even more for my wife, but like, yeah, I don't know. It's like this like long building anticipation.
That's really funny. I wonder if like your firstborn Griffin, like, does he even know what's about to come down? Like, does he know he's about not to be the center of attention anymore?
we we have this like little baby doll that you kind of like introduce to your kid to like get them used to the idea of like you holding another baby and that kind of thing. And he had like a psychological breakdown.
Oh no.
Like everything in his head clicked together in that moment. It's like, oh no.
Poor guy.
So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully he gets I don't know, a little more
Okay,
comfortable.
since unsolicited parenting advice is what people
Yes.
love to receive, this is the only thing I will tell you that
Yes,
I have,
please.
because I only have one. I haven't experienced this myself, but like, so a lot of times the baby's going to be crying and like Griffin's going to be asking for something like, I want milk or I need this. And you have to say like, all right, I need to fix the baby's diaper or like feed the baby and then I'll get you that. That's going to like create like Griffin's anxiety about like the baby's always getting. So sometimes when the baby's crying, you have to be like, all right, baby, I need to go get Griffin's milk. I'll be with you in a minute. So there's like equitable
Yes.
like attention.
Yeah.
That was the one thing that I had never really thought of. And I figured that'd be.
No, that's really smart. That's really smart. Yeah, it's totally like a psychological game that you're playing with your oldest,
Yeah.
just Griffin. So like, yeah, people have said that we should get like a few gifts from the baby too, potentially. You're like, hey, look, the baby left you this, you know, a present. It's
That's great.
It's an hour of Blippi for you from the baby.
It's an hour of Blippi for you from the baby. Look, they even wrote you a card. This is their writing. It's crazy.
Yeah, can you believe it?
Amazing.
Daddy knows Blippi.
I love it. All right. Well, cool. Well, thank y'all for joining us today for another Mograph lunch. We took a little break last week because it was just one of those weeks. Y'all know how it goes. Everything just seemed to be due on one day. And anyway, Mograph lunch got pushed. But we're glad to be back at it again this week. So we got a little trio going on today. So quick introductions. My name is Matt Garrison. I'm one of the co-founders and executive producers at Dash, a high-end animation and motion design studio located in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues, Jay Brown and Marin Hayes. Y'all want to give a quick introduction? Marin, you first, maybe?
Sure. My name is Marin Hayes, and I'm a producer here at Dash. And I've been here about 5 years. 5 years. 2 years.
Wow.
I was gonna say I've been in Raleigh for 5 years, which has been fun.
You've been plotting to join us for 5 years. That's
what it was.
That was probably it.
Mac and I talked 5 years ago, and
That's right.
like, hey, maybe we'll do this.
My name's Jay Brown. I am a motion designer at Dash, and I think I've been there for 5 years, potentially. Has Dash been around for 5 years?
I was thinking about you.
The time just blends together when you're having fun. Yes, Dash has existed for 5 years. We started in 2015. Jay, I think you came in 2016-ish, something like that. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, we got a crew. That's the good thing. So as we like to do it on these Mograph lunches, we really talk about three sort of topics, any just general industry news that seems prevalent, talk about a project, portfolio piece that we've seen recently that we really like, and then just general industry topics. We like to keep it open, sort of the back end. Would love audience participation. You're welcome to listen to Mary and Jay and I just talk to ourselves up here, but it's always more fun, I think, when people chime in. So think about your questions. We'd love to get you involved as well. So jumping right into things, some news that I saw recently that I think everyone was talking about is Adam Pluff and Battle Axe coming out with Anubis. So Anubis is export and compress quick MP4s from Adobe apps with zero concern for bit rates. Rule the underworld and banish hatred for media encoder. Be at the rest upon the sacred mountain. Be at the rest upon the sacred mountain. I love just Adam's descriptions of Battle Axe. That's pretty great. But a little bit of history on Battle Axe. I'm just pulling this from their website, but began as a small independent design and animation studio in Atlanta, Georgia, specializing in broadcast post-production. Give it up for some love for the South. Always love to see Southern studios repping it. But over the course of its 7-year incarnation, the focus became less about production and more about enabling networks, producers, studios, designers to work more effectively. In 2016, Battle Axe, the production studio, closed its doors, started a website, and reopened as a tool development studio. This new Battle Axe would help shape and share a vision of what motion design could be. And boy, did they do that. I feel like if you're an animator in this industry, you have a Battle Axe tool. I know Anubis is the new one that helps with MP4 compression, but just thinking about some of the other ones that I know our team uses a lot, they have Time Lord, Overlord, which I think everyone owns at this point. Rubber Hose, oh my gosh. I mean, could you imagine a character animation from a few years ago that did not use Rubber Hose? I mean, it was just across the board. So what Adam has done in pulling all this stuff together is incredibly impressive and has been a huge help for the After Effects community, since maybe After Effects didn't want to help with some of these themselves. Adam still came in and fixed it up himself. But yeah, at this point in time, I am definitely animating a lot less. That's for sure. So some of these newer ones I haven't used as much as I did, like Overlord. And I know Marion, as a producer, hasn't really used much of this as well. But Jay, maybe you could talk to a little bit on a couple of these, whether it's if you've tried out Anubis or any of these other Battle Axe assets that have been so helpful.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I haven't used the two newest ones, Anubis or Time Lord. But Overlord is definitely one of my, like, every single day I use that. I mean, constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And then Rubber Hose as well. We haven't done, or I haven't worked on 2D character stuff in a little bit, but I mean, that was a part of basically every single 2D character spot that we worked on for a good while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible what they've done. I mean, they've taken things that at the face value, I'm trying to say this in the right way, but like, like there's stuff that you're like, why doesn't After Effects have these things? And they've sort of like stepped in and filled that role in a really awesome way.
No, I totally agree. And, I was watching, it's really funny because I was just like having to compress a ludicrous amount of videos this morning. And, just looking at Anubis, which I'm probably going to download after this call, pay and download it, is just how easy it is. So if you watch a tutorial they have on there, you literally install it and it's a one-click button that exports to MP4. I mean, it's kind of wild, and it's not only just for After Effects. I believe it's like through some of the other, like Adobe Animate, I think was on there too. There's a few others on there that you could work out of. But yeah, one-click exports, which, you don't think is that big of a deal until you spend an eternity creating exports and final files, and like you're rendering out of After Effects, and you bring a media encoder, then you drag it in there, and you create that damn H.264 that everyone creates, but no one has ever explained to me why. But anyway, that's just that's the industry standard for what we create for compression. So definitely excited to get my hands on that. So major props to Adam Pluff and the team for coming up with that. Super excited. Okay, so for a portfolio project, just to kind of keep it in the same realm, their release video that came along with it is just absolutely delightful. It is like what I think every person would want from like a creative brief, is like, just make me something incredibly weird that just is visually stimulating eye candy. And I feel like that's exactly what we're looking at here. So if you're curious, you want to look at the video that we're talking about, we're just looking at it on Instagram. So battleaxe.co spelled out is the Instagram handle. But if you go there, the video that they launched to go along with it, directed by Reese Parker. Let's see, there's a lot of people on this one. Reese Parker, Billy Chicken, Ambrose Yu, really rocking the house with the sound design that went into this. But, looks like kind of retro fantasy type deal that just looked like 8-bit, incredibly fun to work on. I don't know, Jay, any takeaways, or Maren, any takeaways from the visuals that really stuck out to you on this?
Definitely all the different types of things happening together. He's got everything under the sun happening. It's like After Effects vector stuff, 3D stuff imported into it, traditional animation on top of it, and then like effects and blending of all of them. It's pretty awesome.
Maren, what are some of your takeaways on the piece?
Yeah, I would just say like looking at all the different textures and just kind of like what Jay was saying, the mashup of everything just working so seamlessly together. Just really, really nice. And obviously it was like formatted for Instagram, but I just like that we're like continually moving up like, a video game, and I don't know, really nicely done.
I feel like I'm so spoiled as like a motion designer because I'm just perpetually looking at like cool stuff, which is like, it's also bad because like, I don't know, this sounds so bad, but I feel like I get bored so easily. Like I make videos for a living, and sometimes I won't watch a full video if I'm like, all right, I got it, and I just bail. It's my industry, which is awful to say out loud. But I love content like this where you're really meshing different styles, bringing them together for like a unified look. In fact, I would even go as far as to say that's kind of a new trend that we've started to see a lot in even some of our client requests. I know recently like collages have kind of made a big comeback where we just seem to have a lot of clients who are looking to kind of blend multiple styles. I would guess, particularly in that realm, one of the reasons why is you have a year we're coming off of where live action was so limited. The idea of bringing in sort of a human touch or human capabilities is just harder, And so we had clients who were looking to animation, but still wanting to bring in that human touch. And so, at least for us, we found a lot of sort of collage type requests or mixed media type requests, which I would say is pretty similar to this, something that's very mixed media, different styles. As a result, to try to kind of bring in some like more characters and live action shots without having to have a proper shoot. So that's pretty interesting to me as well.
Do you think studios love this trend because it's like you can sort of use everyone that you have different sort of like individual talents,
100%. 100%.
You can bring in every single person instead of like trying to force everyone to do sort of like one specific style.
Oh yeah, Maren, you and I were just like working on a project. We just got off a call with the client a second ago, presenting some style frames that we came up with, and it's the exact same. It's sort of unified under the umbrella of the brand guides with the color palette and things of that nature. But as far as stylistically on who was working on what, it was really nice because we had a few people in studio that had like a day of availability. And it's like, all right, well, if we each have them work on like one frame for that one day, then we end up having a collective look. And it looked great. I'm actually really stoked with how it's like turning out and excited to animate it, which is pretty fun. So I think you're totally right, Jay. Awesome. So we talked on news, talked a little bit on projects. So, just some general industry topics. We were thinking about what would be good to chat through today. And we were kind of brainstorming some ideas. We've talked about a lot already. We also wanted to touch on a topic that I felt like a lot of people could like weigh in on. I know we've done a few things in the past that just seem to talk towards a specific group. So trying to think of something that can maybe bring in the conversation from a broader audience. And that's really where we kind of started to come back to this idea of remote work and, how that's been. And then more importantly, like, where is that going? What does the future of studios start to look like? Given the fact that people are starting to work more and more remotely. I know at Dash, we've had to pivot probably in a direction that I wouldn't say we necessarily anticipated when we first started the studio. But, for folks who don't know, Jay currently lives and works in Wisconsin. He's full-time with us at Dash, but he is up in Wisconsin. And for a while, Jay was our only remote employee. But as we've grown to 11 people or so, I would say half, maybe a little less than half, are now remote, And initially, I was, in full transparency, I was sensitive to that. Like, I think selfishly, really want people to be in Raleigh because I love you guys. I love hanging out with you, all of my best friends, so I want to hang out with you all the time. And so being in Raleigh, being together, I think it does bring a strength when you're all in the same environment. Now, all that said, though, we've been doing this remotely for a past year. Jay, we've been doing it with you for ages, but we've been doing it collectively with more folks this past year, particularly with like freelancers and things like that. And it's gone off without a hitch. I mean, we have made it work. I mean, I think there's little things that have been troubling, but as far as like, can a studio operate with the vast majority of their staff being remote? And I think the answer is yes. But is it good or is it bad? I don't know. Either one of y'all have takeaways? Marion, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a weird year for many reasons. And I just think it's really interesting across every industry obviously has had a pivot due to COVID, or most industries. But to see where we go forward from this, like to your point, Mac, I do think we are set up like all we need is our software and our hardware and an ability to communicate with each other. Like, can we do the work? Yes. What are the opportunities we have to grow when we're not together? And how do we continue to feel that like community and that partnership? I think that's the part that, like you said, is hard. I mean, when we were in the studio and we'd all gather around someone's computer and like talk about their work. And so I do feel like you lose that sense of kind of the feedback loop and the getting people's opinions and that kind of like camaraderie that I think is so important, where people might feel siloed where they are now. I don't know. Obviously, I don't want to speak for everybody and speak for the future, but I think it'll be interesting to see where different studios or agencies move to. I think probably a lot more will be open to a hybrid kind of approach.
That's a really good point, because there's also a line between like making it work and is that the right solution. Like, I can still tell you that sitting down with someone, going over a project, and kind of like having that back and forth from an art direction standpoint is really crucial, and I feel like that is just so much easier in person. We can do it online, and then you end up catching yourself describing like, oh, Megan, if you move your mouse up a little bit and then over to the left to the top corner, the top corner of that, you start describing like how to get feedback. I mean, it's just a challenge, and it still works, but does it necessarily make it better? I don't know. The hybrid approach is really interesting to me. And that is probably where a lot of it is heading, where some people are going to say, hey, I actually really like working from home, but having the option to get that community when I need it, to be able to come in and be in person, having that flexibility, I think is going to be big for a lot of people.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I mean, it like potentially opens up your pool of people that you can employ too, if you're more flexible to it as well.
Well, that's a great point. And, we actually just hired a new 3D animator, Arturo, and he's based in New Jersey. And, in that conversation with Arturo, he was like, I love Dash, I want to be a part of this, but he's like, but I got a family up here, so I need to be in New Jersey. And so, we're looking at how we've been working this past year. And at the end of the day, it wasn't a deal breaker. We're like, yeah, absolutely. You're a great guy. You're awesome work. We'd love to be part of the team. And so you make it work, right? So I do think all of a sudden it does, like you bring up, start to open the door that you don't necessarily need to be in the city to work with these different shops. And so, you start to ask the question, okay, I'm a motion designer. I'm living out in LA and paying this crazy amount of rent. And then all of a sudden these studios aren't necessarily bringing me in-house to work anymore. Like, I'm not coming in, I'm just working from my place. Why am I in LA? Why not go to a smaller market? Now, I'm sure there's something to be said about having a presence in some of these bigger cities and being available and being able to go in. But, I don't know. I see a future when I look ahead at this industry and kind of where it's going, particularly on the heels of this pandemic, where people have shown that they can work remotely. We're seeing that. We're seeing smaller studios and more mid-market areas start to grow, which is, what Dash is. We're in Raleigh, so we're starting to get bigger. I see the freelance community growing. So more people are getting into freelance. They're working from wherever. I just see a world in the future where it's just more acceptable to be in sort of some of these smaller areas and still make a really great career in this industry, and that you don't have a necessity to be in the Chicagos, to be in the New Yorks, to be in the LAs. And I just see more people saying, hey, I actually want like a yard, and I don't want to live in this apartment during like another pandemic. So interesting stuff. Curious if anyone out there listening has a take on any of this stuff on the future of remote work. How hard it's been for you either to get reviews or to get critiques, or just even feeling like a lack of connection, or you still feeling connected. If anyone has any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear from y'all. And while people are considering whether or not they want to raise their hand, I know for me, friendships has been a big thing about this too. Like that's been the hardest thing for me. Like I'm just such an extrovert. I love to talk to people. I love to be around people. And I didn't realize like how much of that I was like gathering from being at an office, while it was like a really simple thing, just being around people just put me, I feel like, in such a better mood, and just felt like, I don't know, I just felt like I was less in a silo when I was around with more people. I don't know. How do y'all feel about that?
Yeah, I'm sort of mixed on that because I'm definitely more of an introverted kind of person. But yeah, I mean, I'll definitely say like I love hanging out with you guys, especially when I get to come down there. So doing that more often would be awesome. And to what you were saying earlier about like even work related stuff, I was just thinking about like there's such a free form element to working on animated projects sometimes, where it's like you just want to like throw an idea out there and see how people respond to it, and not really getting to participate in that as much as a freelancer, from a distance, is definitely something that I miss about it. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but just an additional element I was thinking of.
Yeah, I think it's also like probably since the millennial generation has like started coming up in the workforce, I feel like there was going to be an inevitable shift in how we work anyway. And so the pandemic, I mean, I've like read articles and stuff about like the pandemic just kind of shoved us like 10 or 20 years into the future of working, whereas like we probably would have gotten here anyway with like the kind of gig economy being more common than it was, and people not doing the typical like 9 to 5 job. I think this is also just kind of, I was going to say a small part of that. I feel like it's now like a pretty large part of that, where like back in the day of our parents and grandparents, you really easily separated your work from your home, and you like clock in and clock out, and you like separate yourself from that. And I used to joke that like the whole nomenclature of like work-life balance is like, pretty much since I've been working, like just shoved into one, like
Right.
I think with cell phones and people being like on the clock whenever, if a client needs something, they can get in touch with you whenever. It's more acceptable to like reply whenever. If you can work late because you have kids, you do. If you work early because you have whatever, you do. And so I just think this is also the ability to work wherever is just going to kind of push us in away from that like typical 9 to 5 way of working.
It is sort of like a slippery slope too, like, that comment that you made about how, because everything is around you, right? Work is always around you now at this point, because there's not really a definitive line between work and home. They blend together. I caught myself last night after I did it. I replied to a client at like 10 o'clock at night.
I almost called you out, but I wasn't.
You should have called me out. You definitely should have called me out. I sent that and I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, because as soon as you do that, and that's like a rookie mistake. So like anyone who doesn't know this, as soon as you start to replying to emails at like odd hours, it's going to open the door to clients saying like, oh, cool, they're available. I can email them all the time. So, at Dash, we like try really hard, unless there's like a massive deliverable or something, not to do that. And then I did it myself. But like just how easily that happened, right? I'm sitting there on the couch, like a lazy piece of shit, scrolling on like TikTok videos or something. And I get like a client email, and I'm like, sure. And I just reply to it because it just took me half a second, right? And it was just one less thing to deal with. But then it's like, damn, this is my personal time. Like, what am I doing, And I almost feel like I need to be more thoughtful of that now than I have been previously, because you are like removed when you leave the office. It's a little bit easier to set it down. But now it really does kind of follow you everywhere.
I saw a client in there, like the footer of their email. It said, in like really small print, it was like, my working hours might not be your working hours, so don't feel like you need to reply when I email you. And like I know this client has kids. And so like he was emailing one night really late. And like I had that same feeling like he's emailing, I should just reply to him because it would take 2 seconds and it's not a big deal. But like I really like that was included. And I think it should just be more of a discussion point that like different people have different ways of working. Some people are night owls and some people are early risers. And if I get up really early because my daughter got me up and I might do some work, like doesn't mean that you need to reply at whatever time I send an email. And so I think it's just being aware that people work differently and like not feeling like you need to conform to how they work. And then also, like you said, Mac, like putting boundaries up, which like I should do. Wait, what's the phrase? I should teach what I say, not what I do. Like I've done a really shit job of like taking time for myself and like stepping away from the computer to eat lunch and like go work out and stuff. So I do feel like it's really extra important to keep a schedule and like set those boundaries. And I feel like people who are already working remote, and this is probably applicable to a lot of people in here, so it'd be great to hear what y'all think, but like how has life changed if you were pre-pandemic already working remote? And then like what did the pandemic change for you, and what are you like? I think what I want to know is like what are we going to take? I think from the pandemic, like obviously a lot of terrible stuff happened, but there were some good things. So like, let's take the good stuff and move forward with it and like leave the shit that we don't want, you know?
Yeah, it's really interesting. You talk like, all right, so this is a really good topic. So we talk about flexibility. So, you know, the pandemic has shown that people are dealing with various things in their life, right? You know, whether it's kids who can't go to daycare anymore, who are at home, or like, you know, there's a partner who needs to work in the morning, so someone else has to be there in the morning versus the afternoon, things like that. And collectively as a studio, and I think a lot of other studios have done the same, have been really flexible on that, right? Like that, hey, we get it. This is how it's been. You know, everyone's going through a tough time. But you know who gets left out in the lurch a little bit is the freelancer, because the freelancer is sort of still expected to hit these deadlines. I mean, they have flexibility, I guess, you know, to a certain degree, but you know, to me, it just feels hard when you're getting booked for like a day rate as a freelancer. And, you know, as a studio, we might be a little bit more cognizant about being easier on some of our full-time staff just because we're working together all the time, we're more flexible. But when you bring in a freelancer, typically it's a result of like, hey, you know, we're really busy at the studio. We have this deadline coming up. And so there's this expectation that the freelancer is still going to be able to be available during the day to be working on stuff and getting feedback. I mean, I just feel like the freelancer has to be going through like the hardest spell of it, you know, or maybe it's not. Maybe that a lot of studios have been more flexible and like, hey, you know what, you can work at night, not a big deal. Just make sure you have it turned in the morning. I don't know. It just seems like that role in particular seems like it might not have, you know, it sounds counterintuitive, but it almost seems like it might not have as much flexibility as maybe it did prior to the pandemic. I don't know. It's just a thought.
It's a great thought. I mean, because I genuinely don't know what I would be doing if I wasn't working full time with you guys.
Right.
I mean, if I would, yeah, we would have to work out an entirely different sort of thing. Me and my wife figuring out how we're going to take care of Griffin. So yeah, I don't know if there's anyone here that has experience with that. Would love to hear your thoughts.
I know we work with a lot of international freelancers. You know, I will say over the last couple of years, that's picked up a lot where we've been a little bit more flexible on bringing in international folks to help. And in that regard, you know, we're just planning ahead for it more, you know, and just having to think through the logistics on making sure, okay, well, we have these storyboards approved by this time, or they have all the assets they need, or we got the voiceover recorded by the time this person needs to start. And, you know, a big result of being able to do that, it really just comes down to like planning. And so, you know, we haven't had any freelancers come to us and say, hey, I want to work with y'all, but I'm not available. Well, that's not true. We had one. I can think of one freelancer that we're actually just working with. We just finished up. And I know in his instance, I think it was more because he has a full-time job but still wanted to work with us. He was doing evenings, right? So I think the thing at the end of the day is probably just like planning. You know, if you're a freelancer listening to this and you're kind of been struggling with like how do you get the stuff done during the day when you maybe have like a kid or something else that you're having to help out with as a result of the pandemic, I guess like the biggest thing for me would just be always that conversation, just letting people know. I think sometimes it almost feels like you don't want to bring it up because you don't want to be a pain to a studio, or you want to get that job with it. But I think like to me, the one thing I've learned is that there's just more nuances this year, and to be open to those conversations. I don't know, just a takeaway on that.
Well, I think it's also like the more, and I feel like we've talked kind of about this, but like, and obviously my situation, I'm thinking of this in the lens of like a parent, but like my husband and I have had a lot of discussions about this, that like, I feel like the way that America is set up, like it's not set up for two working parents, like anymore, just like the demands of parenting and the demands of work. And so the idea that I feel like we should bring forward more, like, hey, here's my situation and I have a kid, I still want to work with you, and here's how we'll make it work. Because, like I don't want to have to make a decision about whether I have a job or I'm a parent. And so I feel like the only way to move forward is to be really upfront. And like you said, Mac, like have those discussions, because that particular freelancer, I don't know how he did it, because he's working a full-time job and he's working with us at nights and he has a child. And so I mean, like there's just a huge amount of props to do that. But I just feel like talking about it more will help move us forward.
No, it does. 100%. 100%. It's like the moral of the story is like, be transparent and open about your situations, and don't like hide that stuff because you think it's going to be inhibitive to you getting hired,
Right. Because it's inevitably going to like inhibit not just you, but like the industry as a whole. Like the more we talk about those situations, we can be flexible and move forward to more accepting of that.
100%. All right. Andrea wants to chime in. I'm going to turn on your microphone, Andrea. Welcome to the conversation. Hey, y'all. Thanks again for joining us for Mograph Lunch. As a reminder, this is just the first part of a longer conversation that happens every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Clubhouse. We'll continue the NPG conversation as we talk about news, projects, and general industry advice. And then we'll open up the door on Clubhouse to answer questions live, interact with some of your peers, and get to know some of the folks in the industry. Follow the link below for more information, and we will see you next week.